Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today, joined with me is SuperBlondeNerd. Corinn, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey nerds, what's up? This is Corinn, aka Super Blonde Nerd. I'm very excited to be live streaming with SideGame LLC again, and yeah, I'm excited for what we're talking about today. Just adding in nerd elements with board games, but I do talk about anything from art to all forms of board games, nerd stuff, anything you can really think of on my channel, so you can go check that out if you want.
Yes, so Super Blonde Nerd here. She has a plethora of videos. She recently did a very big haul of all these different products that she's been kind of touring and received from the holidays. She also dives into a whole variety of fandoms. So please go check out Super Blonde Nerd's channel here. Once again, a huge variety of videos. She also does things all the way from book reviews to even things like makeup tutorials. I know there was something that she talked about, a review of like the first season of Arcane with some makeup on that, and that was pretty fun. Not necessarily something I'm going to use because I don't really normally wear makeup, but something that you might find interesting and just to join in on the conversation. So, any other videos that you've really liked putting out recently, Corinn?
I did enjoy my book review. I really enjoyed my Christmas haul. The makeup one is less of a makeup tutorial, as you just watch me play with makeup, and I talk about Arcane. Yeah, no, I'm enjoying all of them. I actually really did enjoy my DIY nerdy ornaments for Christmas. I thought those turned out a lot better than I thought they were going to turn out. So it was just like a fun experimentation. That's kind of what I do on my channel is I just experiment and have fun doing a bunch of things. So.
And that's something that I really enjoy about your channel is I'm not sure what I'm gonna get. And I love that about this. It's like, all right, she put out a video. What's it gonna be this time? And it looks like you're doing fantastic with your growth, and that's awesome. Glad to hear that things are going well for you. I think more people need to see your stuff. So awesome, Corinn. And thank you again so much for joining us today. Let's get into the topic. So what are we talking about today? What's our big topic that we're here for?
We are talking about intellectual properties that should have board games or have more board games.
That's right. So there are a lot of IP games that exist. The 90s was a big time for plastering themes and ideas on board games. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, everything from that to run-of-the-mill TV shows, He-Man, Master Universe, Star Wars galore. There are so many different IPs that were pasted onto games just for that cash grab. But we are here to talk about games that intellectual properties that need good board games with modern design implemented into them. As you can see, we have a bunch of little symbols here that are giving some hints to some of these intellectual properties that we'll be discussing. And if you have any suggestions or ideas for these, please leave them down in the comments below, whether that be during this live show or after the fact. I just love to hear your ideas and want to have you join in on this discussion. Anything else to add before we start, Corinn?
I'm ready.
All right, we're ready. So let's go ahead and jump into the first theme or the first intellectual property, and that is going to be for Death Note. Now, this one here is one that is, if you're not familiar with the genre, the whole premise is there is a boy, a high school student, who receives a Death Note. And this is a book that you write someone's name in it, and that person dies within so many seconds of a heart attack. There's also some things that you learn about the Death Note as the story continues. And if you don't want to hear any spoilers to this, we won't go into too heavy on the spoilers of the series as a whole, but just some overviews as to some of the themes that may show up. So, Corinn, what's your passing knowledge of Death Note?
I watched Death Note for the first time about 2 years ago, I want to say. Really enjoyed it. There was a lot of... I actually talk about Death Note in one of my random videos that I talked about in October, which was like dark anime. And so Death Note was definitely on there. Yeah, no, it's a great, really neat story about the afterlife and moral consequences and having basically the power of God. So
It's such an interesting theme, and this was a
Mhm.
phenomenon in Japan. When I lived in Japan, this was a series that people were reading and still very engaged in, and it was so cool to watch people kind of grasp with who is right, who is wrong, and the gray morality between the different characters. Because
Mhm.
you have the high school student here, Light, who's using the book to commit murders, but he's killing convicted criminals, so people that he deems need to be purged from society.
Right.
Whereas you have the detective that's going against him in the form of L, who is going to try to hunt down, because killing is killing. It's still unjust. And then trying to figure out what this is going to be. Now, going away from the theme here and into what we'd like to see in the game mechanics, when I initially thought about Death Note, it brought me to the game that I'm currently playing a lot of. And this is Mind Management. So, Mind Management is a hidden movement game where you are trying to move throughout a board and to try to deduce where a certain character is. But I would love to see that portrayed in this format where you have a character who can literally control people and then eventually kill them, which I think would make for a very interesting game of cat and mouse detective crime solving, but also having this player who's acting as the player with the Death Note being able to use the different characters on the board in small amounts of time before they eventually perish. And so the goal is to manipulate these people and have them die before the end of the game, and also fulfill certain objectives and criteria while remaining your anonymity. What did you think about what sort of game mechanics could be implemented in a game like this?
Well, that's so funny because I definitely thought of the opposite perspective of you are playing as like the detectives and Light is the one that you're like cuz hidden movements and stuff. So you're trying I guess I haven't played my what is it called?
Mind management.
Mind management. You're trying to find Light because he's constantly evading them and using people to throw them off the trail and stuff. So I definitely had the opposite idea of like, oh, you're policemen, you're detectives trying to find Light and or the people who Light is using and you suspect as the killer.
And I think that
So
this there could be a great cross between
mhm.
these two ideas, leading to some asymmetric gameplay, different scenario-based play, and two entirely different modes to approach the game. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of different things you can do with Death Note, with the IP as a whole. There's two entire like series that you could play off of. There's that
Mhm.
first arc with L, and then the second series that introduces new characters. Any other notes to add on this before we move on to the next one?
Not coming right off the top of my head, so I will let you
Okay.
know.
Okay. Another couple of things. There are Shinigami that exist in the universe, and that could play into the game as well with different powers, different unlocks, lots of new things you learn. And that brings me back to Mind Management, where they have this shift system that at the end of each game, you're unlocking new content. And I could see that being
Mm.
put into here with some of the factors that make the series so compelling. So that's our
Okay.
first game, our first theme. Death Note needs games about it, more games about it. I want to see this and see how they employ this excellent cat and mouse and decision of justice and morality. So it's super exciting. And that is our first game. All right. So that's our first topic here. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And this one is a suggestion by SuperBlondeNerd here. This is one that she brought up and said, hey, make sure that you include this. And I'm excited to hear. Tell us what this one is all about, Corinne.
This is Professor Layton. If you have played any Nintendo Nintendo DS, I think, is when he originally came out. And he is another Sherlock Holmes-esque character, but he solves mysteries through puzzles. A lot of logical mind play puzzles. So basically anything that you want to do to further into the mystery, you got to solve a puzzle. And so you have Professor Layton there with the top hat, and then next to him is Luke, who is aspiring to be a young gentleman like Professor Layton is, but he's also very smart and helps solve puzzles. So they go on tons of adventures and not just like common mysteries, but we're talking time travel, we're talking ghosts, we're talking all over the realm. And I love the art style of it. It's very adorable and really well done. There's actual animated cutscenes throughout each game, so that's really fun. So I definitely thought there's a ton of murder mysteries and Sherlock Holmes themed games. So I definitely thought easily can put that into this theme into those types of games. But I was thinking, I was like, oh man, how am I supposed to incorporate puzzles into the gameplay, because that's such a important part of Professor Layton. So there's definitely something, and maybe Mackenzie, you can help me out with thinking of what game mechanics could add a little bit of puzzle solving
So one
to the
thing that
game.
this leads me to think about are
Mhm.
games like Seventh Continent or even like the Unlock series. In Seventh Continent, a lot of the times you'll be pulling out these cards and they'll have tiny little mini games or mini puzzles you'll need to solve. And based on your results, it's going to guide you down different paths. Otherwise, we have the escape room games, unlocks,
Yes.
exits. A lot of these have those micro puzzles. They're
Mhm.
more so a riddle, more so than a logic puzzle. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to see how it would translate into this. What kind of style would you approach this? A scenario based game, an overarching campaign? What would you prefer for this kind of setting?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I think a campaign would be better. And then that way you have such rich content per, but you could still do different campaigns, just like the different Sherlock series games, or even what you were saying, like the escape rooms. Each escape room could be a different scenario that Professor Layton and Luke have to use and solve. So I think there's definitely a lot of ways that we can incorporate Professor Layton into games. So
Wow.
yeah,
I think this is rife for some sort of board game
for sure.
implementation, and I love this cute artwork. I'm sure this would pull in a huge crowd. Any other
Mhm.
final touches or things you want to add before we move on to the next topic here about Professor Layton?
Um, just what you were saying, like unlocking new things and new scenarios, bringing in all these more beloved characters that are also seen throughout each of the campaigns and stories. Because I think there's five to 10 different Professor Layton games. So there's a lot that we can work with.
Excellent. And these logic puzzles, they're like kind of micro games in themselves, or just straight up puzzles. Because when I see this, it reminds me of something like WarioWare a little bit, where you have
Yeah.
these like little mini things that you're taking on just successively. Is that kind of the approach here?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. There's definitely there, it's all between like logical puzzles, riddles, micro games, things like that.
Yeah, I could see this being a game that would work perfectly in a cooperative or solo setting that you could really sit down and just enjoy for hours, which is probably
Yes.
why the video game's so compelling.
Yes. For sure.
Excellent. All right. So that is our second game, Professor Layton. Excellent choice here. All right. Our next game was another one suggested by Corinn here that actually does have some board games currently already out for it. One is on its way for delivery. It's currently in production from Kickstarter. And this is going to be a very popular series, book series, video game series, and now recently a TV series. This is The Witcher. Corinn, go ahead. Let us know, what is The Witcher and why was this one that came to your mind?
Well, The Witcher for me has definitely been ingested through Netflix. I have heard of the video games and I've seen friends of mine play the video games. So I knew The Witcher existed, but I didn't know anything of the story or the lore until the Netflix series. And a lot of the fans of both the books and the video games, including Henry Cavill, who plays our Witcher, really enjoy the series and say that they do a good job of kind of appeasing both, which is really exciting to hear. So that makes me love the series more. But yes, I thought of The Witcher partially because the second season is out right now. And I thought of a Mansions of Madness or Betrayal at the House on the Hill kind of game, because The Witcher has such a stack of monsters and villains and morally gray characters, which I think you could have the morally gray characters as each of your individual people with, different stats that you start with, as well as maybe with Mansions of Madness or Betrayal of the House on the Hill, having someone betray or become the enemy is very plausible. There's a lot of like mind messing monsters and things like that. So I know that there could be a lot of things done and a lot of both fan service and just really fun gameplay doing this type of game, but also in like a fantasy series, because mostly Mansions of Madness and Betrayal of the House on the Hill are more modern, or like coming from like the 1800s to modern times, but the Witcher obviously is like far further back. So it'd just be fun to play around with those as well and explore, and even do things not just like in a house, but like in the forest or in a graveyard. Like there's so many options, and I think it would be really fun to have the Witcher style in that kind of game.
And the whole system here, it brings me back to thinking about something like the new Assassin's Creed board game and how they have these
Mm,
linked missions where you're going to a home base after each mission. And that's one thing that they really dove into in this second season of The Witcher was the I forget the name of the castle, Calmoren. It's the
mhm.
castle where the Witchers train, and they have a lab there where they research and understand the creatures and monsters. And I think that could be a lot of fun with, taking out these big monsters, bringing them back, and then saying, okay, what can we do to analyze and strategize and move forward and come up with different ways to combat them in the future. And I think that's a really cool aspect, the alchemy and the magic that you can learn and progress during the game. So I think there's a
Yes.
lot of really neat things. And I think that the Mansions of Madness system, even if you had that app integration, could help you track that and store it. And I think this would
Mhm.
be a really cool game to implement some app integration.
Yes, and I don't know if Mansions of Madness originally is a campaign based game, or you could turn it easily into a campaign based game, like you were saying.
Mansions of Madness is definitely a scenario-driven game,
Okay.
but there are lots of systems that use that similar style. In particular, Journeys in Middle Earth for Lord of the Rings is a
Okay.
campaign version that uses a app very similar to Mansions of Madness.
Very
Now,
cool.
currently there are quite a lot of board games for The Witcher. Sorry, not quite a lot. There are three, so I guess that's not quite a lot. So there are board games that exist for The Witcher. So there is the Witcher Adventure game, which is the one that actually probably has the most popularity. It is ranked 3,000, not very high ratings. It's an adventure game in that Witcher universe. And then we have the most recent Kickstarter, Witcher Old World, which is where the majority of the popularity is going to. People are very excited to see this modern, up to date version of a Witcher exploration. And then we have two other card games in the form of
Okay.
the adventure card game and just The Witcher. So, not very well loved games, very much faded into the background. But I'm excited to see what they're going to do with Witcher Old World. I'm
Hmm.
super pumped. They're taking some of the combat systems from Tainted Grail, which is my favorite part of that entire series, and then using that this Western Legends style of free for all roaming and fighting combat. So excited to see how they employ it, but definitely always excited for more Witcher board games. And I think you put out some great ideas here, Corinne.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds super exciting. Um, yeah, I'm ready. The Witcher.
Excellent. All right. So this next topic is one that I've gotten really into recently with the release of the new Netflix series, Arcane. So this is a
Mhm.
intellectual property that comes from Riot Games, and Riot Games has actually created many games already, and so they've proven that they can put out incredible board game projects. One being in the top 100 in the form of Mechs versus Minions, but Riot Games' most famous property is League of Legends. Now, League of Legends is a MOBA style game where you have this lane combat, you have a group of champions that you're sending at each other, and I am so shocked that they have not taken this property and turned it into a game yet, because they've branched out into all other sorts of their IPs and created new content through that. And other games have tried to implement this lane combat style, but nothing has come close to giving that feeling. Guards of Atlantis and Guards of Atlantis 2 have come the closest, but this League of Legends system has so many characters that are beloved and rich. The system makes sense. You have these maps, these lanes that people are going through, minions you're killing, upgrades and bonuses. There's so much going on in League of Legends, and they have it already. They have the characters, they have the abilities, the combats, things down to a stat that work well in the video game, and I want to see that ported over into this a board game style. What are your thoughts on League of Legends, Corinne, and what do you think could be done with a board game system?
Yeah, I am not a League of Legends player. My husband is. And so though I have watched all of Arcane, and watching Arcane with him was really fun because he would point out like all of the Easter eggs for all the different legends. I think now they could dive into creating a really good game. I think it's probably intimidating for them because there are so many characters and the world is so expansive. But I definitely think now, with how modern board games are coming out, with like just all the different campaign settings and, like you were saying, the mechanics that have been made for different games, I think they can easily now apply their characters and their lore to um, those game types. So I think I think they could now dive into that. I would be intimidated, especially with this franchise, and how big it is. So it would definitely easily, especially now with Arcane, you could really hone in on maybe those characters because now they're not just a niche of League of Legends fans, but Netflix fans now too. So I think they can definitely apply it and have an expansive world, or at least, maybe do board games released on each world, like sectioned off, make
Yeah,
it a little bit more digestible.
and League of Legends already has multiple properties in the form of
Mhm.
different apps. So they have a phone
Yeah.
app, Wild Rift, which is a more approachable form of the lane combat system. And they also have a card game called Legends of Runeterra that actually has taken these themes and characters and ideas from Arcane and given them their own campaign mode. So you'll take a deck of cards that relate to Jinx or Vi or Caitlyn, and then you'll run through their different story modes using the card game system. So I'm curious as if they're maybe testing out the waters here, if we could even get a physical version of something like Legends of Runeterra. But I want League of Legends. I want the lane combat system. I want this system of champions, this leveling up, this progressive battle,
Mhm.
and this chess-like movement across this board. Oh, it sounds wonderful. We got a comment here. My brother's in the chat. This is Jordan Franklin coming out from Florida, and he says Sky Tier Horde. And I think that is very appropriate. So Sky Tier, if you're unfamiliar, has taken the idea of this lane combat and put it into board game form. They're very similar to Guards of Atlantis, bringing this MOBA genre into board game format. And
Okay.
Sky Tier Horde is a card game tower defense system that employs their
Oh,
champions from the original Sky Tier. So you definitely have companies that are taking this idea and putting it forward, but League of Legends is that driving IP that already has these proven characters and abilities and conjunctions and combinations of everything.
gotcha.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts before we move on to our next topic here?
It's really big. So it's a big ask. But I think they could do it for sure.
I think so as well. They've got the resources. They have the creative teams. I'm
Yeah.
excited to see more games from Riot's. Tellstones was their last game that they released, and that probably wasn't the greatest game in the world. It's a memory game that's like set
Oh,
in the Runeterra universe,
okay.
and did not hit very well for me. Very much exactly as it seems. So,
Mm.
not interested in playing memory, but am interested in this new. Oh, please give me this League of Legends content. Sounds fantastic. All right. Our next game here, this is another suggestion from Corinn, one that she feels very strongly about. And I'm curious to see just your takes on this in general. A game that took the world by storm and still is extremely popular. This is Animal Crossing.
I was like,
Tell us,
which
what is
one's it
Animal
about?
Crossing? Why is this exciting? Why should we be looking forward to it in board game form?
Animal Crossing is a feel good, simple video game. It's life simulation. It has enough goals and objectives and things that is going to keep you playing for years to come, as well as the ability to terraform and change the houses and locations of things. So you can really create your own island with adorable characters. And again, the gameplay is very simple. So if it's something just to help you wind down or you like this type of gameplay, it is definitely for you. Um, Turning this into a board game, I think, would be pretty simple. Again, it would be because Animal Crossing has just expanded into their new update and their DLC. There's a lot of home decor variations and different things that you can do, but I think we could implement Animal Crossing into a type of like create your home board game. Like I think it's just called Dream House. So there are, and just with this art style, it is so iconic and cute. I think there are a lot of ways that we can put in um, the ability to choose kind of what you want your house to look like and little objectives and bonuses that you can add through what you collect and what resources you have and things like that. So there's a lot of ways that we can put this into a simplistic board game that makes you feel just as warm and fuzzy as the video game itself.
This is a great approach. I think the theme is wonderful. And I'm curious as to see if they decided to make a board game, if they would go more the route of something like the Stardew Valley board game, if you've seen that,
Mm.
where it's a cooperative nature and you're trying to fulfill some objectives, or if they're going to go more towards the way of Mythwind. Are you familiar with Mythwind at all?
I don't think so. I think I might have seen it like listed, but no, I'm not. I'm not. Maybe
So
I've seen it as a what is it called? Facebook
maybe a
ad.
Facebook advertisement or something. So this was a
Yes.
very recent Kickstarter that promises gameplay similar to the vein of Animal Crossing. The whole idea is it's a game you can play forever. You simply open it up, you play, you build your town, you increase your buildings, you play mini games, you're making goods, selling goods, participating in this forest, going hunting, doing whatever your character does best. And then when you're done, you just put it away. And then the next time you play, you open it up and just pick up where you left off. There's no end game. There's no way that the game wraps up. You just play forever in a very chill sense. It uses mechanisms similar to Merchant's Cove, where you have a lot of asymmetric factions and abilities, and it's
Okay.
just you exploring and increasing the efficiency of the different actions you're taking. So it's a very beautiful game with lots of great artwork that calls into this world of
Yeah.
these different characters and this emergent narrative that's going to come from just the explorations you have. So is this something
Yes.
that you would like Animal Crossing to look like, or do you think that there could be some changes that you do when you include it this Animal Crossing world?
It would honestly be so cool to have Animal Crossing this delved into, because like I say, Animal Crossing is pretty simplistic. There are a lot of options and features that can be put into the game for like the options of how you decorate and how you create your village. So I definitely think there could be similar features like this game, but yeah, I wonder how we would do it because of like the different characters here. I mean, you could do the same with the different critters that you have, like Mr. Nook and Isabel, and you have different like store clerks and goods uh, goodsmen selling goods and all of that. So there's definitely some cute critters you can put into there, as well as like the plethora of critters you can choose to put on your island. We can incorporate that as well, but that would be really cool. How detailed and thorough you could go for this game would be really neat.
I think that there's a lot of opportunity for just creative choices when it comes to mini games, little things that you're working on. I'm super curious. And we got a comment here from Jordan here with talking about Animal Crossing in particular. He says having it as an engine building game or Santorini style, having sets that adds additional bonuses when playing with characters. This sounds really fun. Or something like Wingspan, where you're adding to
Yes.
rows of cards and just
Hmm.
having your group of these critters that you can employ. So switching from more of taking the feeling of Animal Crossing, but just using the theme instead and putting that into
Yeah,
a different game. And I think
and
that's
I'm
great. Yeah,
yeah, totally fine with that. I mean, that's what we're talking about too.
absolutely. I like to see the creativity using these characters in new and unique
Hmm.
ways. And I
Yeah.
think that if you want to have that Animal Crossing experience, maybe that's when you play the video game. But then if you want these characters, you can use them in this other format.
Yeah.
Sweet. Any other things to add to Animal Crossing before we move on?
No, I mean, I like there are so many options of how we can apply Animal Crossing to board games. Let's do it.
Now, speaking of so many options, our next IP here is just, it's not even an intellectual property. This is a straight up brand that has taken so many IPs and reused them. This is Lego. Now, Lego has so many board games already, but have you ever heard of a good one?
I honestly haven't even heard of a Lego board game.
Right off the bat, that sounds so cool. Am I wrong? A Lego board game. A lot of different things can go into making this happen. You can have dice with Lego facets where you can affix different things. So something like
Yeah.
Dice Forge, where you're creating and crafting dice that you're using. You have boards that can literally be built up based on the
Hmm.
pieces that you're using. You have characters that can swap in things and out things. I know that there have been a lot of games that have come out recently with miniatures with like detachable heads and weapons that you can attach. Lego has all this built into its framework. So it has the component quality, but also the features that could be used to combine to create a really interesting tactile experience. But we just need the game to represent this as well. What do you think could make a Lego game interesting, and how could they use these different Lego pieces in a creative way?
Well, you kind of said it where you are building on your board game board itself, like creating a city, create or a fortress, whatever genre you want to go for. Because again, you were saying Lego just has all of the intellectual properties. Good morning. um, yeah, so there it's I was like looking at the Lego movie poster and I'm like, where do you even begin? Do you do kind of what Lego movie did, which is just put it all in the same city and just make it work, you know? But yeah, I would love the idea of building a city or some structures on your board game. I mean that's what Lego is building and creating things. I think that would be really cool.
And I'm just curious in general. So I'm going to pull up a list of all of the current Lego board games
Okay.
because there are so many. So you thought that list for Witcher was a little sparse. This is going to blow it out of the water. And I think that Best at
Okay.
Star Trek has a great point here. He says he played a Lego board game and it was decent, but he doesn't remember the name. And Best at Star Trek, I don't blame you because there are so many Lego board games, but none of them have really made it up there. So we have Lego Creators, Super Speedway Game, Champions, Soccer, Constructionary, Ninjago, and a lot of these are pretty recent. Like you have a lot of these games that have come out in the last couple of years. So that's the Ninjago one was 2016, Lego
Right.
Knights. There's been trading card games that have been set in the Lego universe. And so you've seen this time and time again, people trying to break into this genre of Lego style gameplay. And I just think that it needs to have a dedicated designer bring in these
Hmm.
modern mechanisms and say, how can I use these components well? And I'm curious to know what is the thing that's stopping Lego from having something like this.
Well, kind of what I was saying, like there's just such a plethora of intellectual properties that Lego basically memes and creates their own version of. So you can even see it there. There was like the Lego The Hobbit Journey,
Hmm.
Lego Ninjago, which is their own, but just infinite genres and things, and they can't really stick to one. Um,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it really reminds me a lot of Funkoverse, if you are
Mhm.
familiar with that property,
Yeah. Yeah.
or Unmatched, where they have access to all of these IPs, and now it's just a matter of using them effectively. For example, Funkoverse has taken the idea and created a skirmish game out of it, where you get a team of characters of your choice and you battle at it, you have at it. And I think
Yeah.
that could be something really interesting here too, having a skirmish style game where you build the terrain, which would be out of Lego pieces, and then you have the characters that are customizable. You could even swap features. Maybe the cards have the different, the head, the
Yeah.
body, and the feet, and you can interchange those. Maybe you have, I don't know, Lego Batman's head, but a raptor from Jurassic Park's
Right.
body, and combine those together. I think that'd be very interesting and playing into the Lego theme, so it's not just a theme pasted onto Lego, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Combining all of the different character aspects so you basically Lego merge the most powerful character. Like having the speed of a velociraptor, but the mind of Batman, or whatever, however you want to apply that. Yeah, I think kind of what I was saying with League of Legends, it's so big and daunting. And what you were saying is that they just need a sole Lego board game creator, someone just focused on that they could create like a really good product out of it.
Could you imagine if someone like Tom Lemon, who is just wrapping up Dice Realms, which uses
Mm.
interchangeable dice faces, had their chance at creating a Lego game? Someone who's a master at engine building and creative
Mhm.
mechanisms, taking Lego and doing whatever they want with it.
Yeah,
Whew.
that would yeah, it could we could go somewhere. It could be a good Lego game.
And apparently, Jordan says to check out Lego Time Cruises. It's a classic. And Best at Star Trek, thanks for joining us, even though it is a little early on your end on the West Coast. So thanks for joining us this morning.
We
But
really appreciate it.
but that's Lego, another theme that's just super exciting. for this whole board game, just board game treatment. So let's get a great one with some excellent designers and just see what they can make for us. But apparently, got to go check out Lego Time Cruisers.
Yeah.
All right, up next we have another intellectual property. Let's pull it up here really quick. This is going to be for this one is fun. Okay, so this is one that Corinn suggested, and I'm just going to have you take this one and
Okay.
speak to it because you had a very specific idea for this genre of game that does have quite a lot of board games based about it already, but you want something specific. So Corinn, take it away here.
So this is D&D, I'm assuming. I'm waiting for the image to show up. But yeah, so there are a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons itself is already a board game. It's more role playing, but there are boards and maps and things that you can add to play D&D. But there are Dungeons and Dragons board games. My thought was kind of a combination of a few games like Scythe, where you start at different kingdoms and you are able to, your goal is to conquer the land. And the way that you will do that is you will go throughout the territories, and I would think the map has like just all sorts of territories and different types of lands, like forests and tundras and deserts, and each section that you explore will also have those characters that are associated with it, which you will see from D&D, like elementals and elves and rangers and kings and knights and slimes and ghosts. Just again, plethora of characters, because Dungeons and Dragons just has that in their game, and being able to give them different stats, as well as you go through the game, you would collect these characters and you could either conquer or ally with them. And you would have, I would think, this has been popping through my head. I kind of want to create the game myself. Having a team of 4, and every time that you go and collect a new card or battle the new card, you will take that person and replace one of your team members. So you're always constantly having like a new team. So it's like engine building, it's exploration, it's conquering, it's strategy. There's a lot of things that obviously need to be finessed and worked through, but I think it would be very fun fighting game, strategy game, conquering game, lots of different aspects of how you could win the game as well. So,
and Dungeons and Dragons lends itself to a variety of different games. So just
exactly.
a quick BGG search here gives us at least 2 pages of Dungeons and Dragon themed games. So it exists. This is definitely something that they can do. A lot of the more popular versions of the Dungeons and Dragon games are these dungeon crawls, where you have these adventure games. Dragonfire is one of the more recent ones, where they've taken this idea and put a campaign to it. And it makes sense that you could have a lot of freedom and flexibility with this. And so I like the idea you're pitching here. And is there anything else you want to add to this?
I'm going to look through my notes real quick, make sure that I didn't say anything else to that. Team, different regions. Just as like you would also claim the regions, and you would have to have like a certain number of resources or points or some sort of system in that point system in order to conquer that land, and that's how you would do it. So yeah, there's, like you were saying, there's so many games already, like dungeon crawls and stuff, but this would be kind of a little different because it's more broad. It's not just a specific dungeon crawl, and you have and be able to visit all of those like beloved characters, like the Beholder and things like that. So
Gotcha. I like it. It reminds me a little bit of something like Lords of Waterdeep, where they're taking the idea and the theme, but putting a different style of game on top of it. So very cool. That's Dungeons and Dragons, something Corinn is very, very excited about and clearly has a lot of ideas for. So super exciting. All right. Our next game here goes to Pokemon. And this is one that I recommended. And I think that, why has this not been done? There are several Pokemon board games. They exist. I've played them. Pokemon Master Trainer, one of the most brutal games ever, exists. Is it good? No. Is it well known? Yes. But could you imagine a game where you are progressively picking up people, almost similar to the Dungeons and Dragons game you just discussed, where you are leveling up your party and you're participating in a very satisfying mechanism where you are consistently catching, capturing, and utilizing different abilities in the form of pocket monsters. These pocket monsters have effects ranging from lightning blast to fireballs, and just have a very flavorful assortment of features and just battling tactics. And I think that bringing that battle system into either an adventure experience or even a head-to-head battle, I think would work extremely well outside of the trading card game that does exist already, but bringing it into a board game fashion. So, Pokemon, what's your familiarity with Pokemon? Is this something you enjoy?
Oh yeah, I grew up on Pokemon. I didn't play a whole lot of Pokemon cards, but I played a lot of Pokemon video games, which is a whole, you know, that's half, not half. A good part of the fandom is just the Pokemon video games, and the show. Watched the show for a while. Love the original 151. I don't even know how many Pokemon there are now. But yes, I got Pokemon Sword. Been playing that, super fun. Yeah, it's such a, and again, this is from nostalgia because you grow up with it. There is, because there are so, I mean, Pokemon continues to live forever and ever. Because there are so many Pokemon, there is an infinite amount of battles and ways that you could absolutely apply this to a board game and be able to rank up your team so that you are undefeatable. Um, yeah, I no, Pokemon is wonderful. I was trying to have him show up, but this is a little Mudkip.
Oh, how
Little
cute.
Mudkip. I was trying to have him show up on the shelf, but it's a little hard to see.
He's a little
Um,
far back.
he's a little far. Um, yeah, no, I think, and again, going back to what I've said before, I think now is the time because, like, undoing Pokemon cards on like TikTok and YouTube and all that stuff is such a huge thing. I think we can absolutely do a Pokemon board game, and it would be the time to do it, and people would be into it because just undoing Pokemon card games and getting people either re-familiar with Pokemon or introducing them to Pokemon for the first time. We could do a board game, and I think it would go really well.
Oh yes, definitely. Now here is something really cool. So it looks like my dad is also here on the stream with us, and he wants to mention a game that he created for us when we were kids, and this is his own form of Pokemon Master Trainer. And I remember this vividly. This was one of the coolest gaming experiences I've I've ever experienced. He essentially said, "Hey, all these Pokemon board games suck. Let's make a good one." He took the idea of something like a classic, I would say, exploration game where you're moving around the land, visiting different areas, capturing Pokemon, exactly what we're asking for here, and using the Pokemon trading card game system to implement characters that you could actually pick up and acquire. You pick your starting Pokemon, you go from place to place, you add new Pokemon to your portfolio, and then you go from gym challenge to gym challenge. And I remember it vividly as being a wonderful experience. I'm trying to remember the game that he lifted the map from. I think it was maybe Emperor's Treasure. But overall, it was a great combination of different mechanisms, and it was great. This was the game, and the fact that I was the only one that got to play it, that's a shame.
That
So
is a shame, but that's also the sweetest thing ever.
it
That's
was
so
awesome.
awesome.
I'm not
My
gonna I'm not gonna pretend that I didn't appreciate having a gamer for a
Yeah.
dad, because we got to do amazing things like this.
My brother did the same thing with Monopoly and another game where we basically did what gaming companies do now, which was we created like a DC Universe version of Monopoly, and like he created each individual, location to like build and the different cards and all the things that we could do. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
so I understand that making your own game is like super fun, and you can, because we are game enthusiasts, we know what is good and would go well in a board game. So
Oh yeah. And
I definitely
just
think we could do Pokemon. We could do it.
Oh,
Let's do
yes. Oh, yes. And
it.
I am really surprised that just the idea of Pokemon hasn't been lifted and put into other games. The concept of catching or using a character in future battles for your own use, I think that's huge. Like it's the
Yeah.
equivalent of getting a familiar or a new weapon or a new item, but in the form of something adorable and cute that has a personality attached to it. So
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot to love about Pokemon, and I'm curious to see what they do and when we'll get an amazing game similar to the one that my dad designed. So very, very cool. So that is Pokemon, our next game. Up next, we have just no intro here. This is Avatar. So, Avatar The Last Airbender is a wonderful Nickelodeon series that comes in two flavors. You have the OG Avatar The Last Airbender and then The Legend of Korra, a little aged up, more futuristic, watching the world develop. But this produces these characters called benders that have control of the different elements. Corinn, what is your familiarity with Avatar and what sort of things would you like to see in games?
Oh man, Avatar, another nostalgic. Grew up watching it on Nickelodeon when the episodes premiered. Obsessed. Went to the midnight premiere of the movie that shall not be named. Um, but did all that. Watched Legend of Korra. So I am a huge fan of Avatar. I've read also the comics that have come out, the different comics that go right from after the ending of the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. So they continue on and kind of do what happened to Zuko's mom and things like that. So those are very good. I recommend you read them. But yes, so I'm a huge fan. I was talking with Mackenzie early, and he was like, don't tell me until we go on a live stream." So my husband and I have been playing Tapestry, and I think Tapestry could easily the Tapestry mechanics and gameplay could easily have an Avatar: The Last Airbender flavor, because there are different civilizations throughout the entire expanse and world of the Avatar universe. And I think we could go pretty nuanced for some. I don't know if we could get like 16 out of them, but I think there could definitely be flavors like the Fire Nation, the Air Nomads, the Bossing Say, the Swamp People, just so all of the civilizations would have their own specific abilities that will enhance or help you during the game, as well as with Tapestry you go up and advance your civilizations. And because of Legend of Korra, you can do that. They have mechs and like steampunk futuristic advances, so you could start from the Avatar: Last Airbender time period all the way up to Legend of Korra, maybe further, but you could definitely advance and have futuristic um, advancements that you can do. And again, Tapestry cards, so different abilities that you can apply to your civilizations, add a bunch of flavor from the game, as well as I wonder, one of the things you can get is also monuments or landmarks. And I think there are plenty of landmarks in Avatar. So creating like little miniatures of those and being able to place them on your land would be so cool. So yeah, I think the Tapestry gameplay and mechanics, we could start from there. It doesn't have to be exactly Tapestry, but I definitely think there's a lot we could do with that.
I think that macro perspective of looking at the nations as a whole is a really interesting way to approach the Avatar universe. Now, there are currently 3 big games that are for Avatar: The Last Airbender already. The first one is actually from Legend of Korra. It is the Pro Bending Arena. So they've taken the idea of the Pro Benders and have you doing a skirmish game where you're competing in the sport, and you'll have your different team of benders versus another team of benders.
Love
There's
it.
also a trading card game that allows you to play the characters in a head-to-head style. But the last one, which is a very micro look at the Avatar world, and one that I gotta share here. It is Last Airbender. Oh my cabbages. And this came out last year in 2021. So it just came out.
Oh
It's
my
not rated very
god.
high at all, but
Oh
oh
no.
my cabbages. Run your own cabbage stand in the world of Avatar while Avatar Aang ruins your cabbage stand.
Yes.
Oh my
I love
goodness.
it.
And look at this. You've got the classic money. You've got the different locations that you're visiting around the map, and you've got your cabbage stands that you'll be setting up in these different areas.
So funny.
Ah,
I love that they created that niche and was like, let's do it. People love the cabbage guy. Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
I think it's hilarious. Now, when I think of Avatar: The Last Airbender, obviously I'm excited to try out something more in the veins of actually using the bending. I like the idea of having characters that you can manipulate and move, either in like a scenario-based style or in a game of tactical combat where you're moving around and employing the abilities, learning new ones as you progress, and then maybe even having a campaign scenario where you play as Aang and you level up and learn the different bending powers and abilities you play. But I don't know, this cabbage game, I might have to try this one out. Look at the map, look at the coins. I mean,
Yeah.
you get to travel the whole nation. Look at this, you got the whole map there.
That's great. I love it. I definitely have to try this. I hope it's good.
Oh my gosh,
The
could you
cabbage man
imagine?
deserves it.
In the future, we got to do a live play of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes!
Oh my cabbages. There you go. There's an idea for your 1K. Oh my gosh.
That's
Amazing.
amazing.
Oh man. Any other thoughts or things to add for Avatar before we move on?
I wonder if we could even go, I don't know if this would you could just do as an expansion or adding on to one of the games we've already talked about, but doing the spirit realm and
Hmm.
adding those into that, because that's a whole other aspect, that's a whole other world. So what you could like derive from there, I think would be interesting.
Oh yeah.
Like the
There's
is it Ka?
mhm.
The spirit of Ka? Using him. Oh man. OP. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we do, and the moon and the sun, or yeah, the sun and moon fish,
Yeah,
the moon spirit.
there's
Yeah,
such a rich world in
yeah,
Avatar.
yeah.
So I think any game could really dive deep. As you saw that micro look where you're looking at the cabbage salesman, or the macro look where you're looking at how the different nations interact with each other as a whole. So I really like this concept, this idea, and honestly, any amazing Avatar board game, I'll eat up. I was really excited. They
Yes,
announced a role playing game, but before that was
yes.
announced, we didn't really know what the game was going to be. So I
Mhm.
figured that was going to be some amazing board game because it was put out by IDW, who does a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game that's really well done. And so I
Mm,
was really excited to see if they were going to create a board game for Avatar. But alas, that did not happen. It was the RPG instead. So, but super excited nonetheless. Now, the last game that we're talking about here is one that I picked personally, and I think it's a very popular character, but one that not a lot of people talk about
yeah.
or have any crazy IPs. And I just think that it would be a perfect board game. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay because this kind of blindsided me as well. This is Kirby. So, Kirby is a lovely little pink ball whose whole gimmick is a platforming style game where you move around a map, but he can suck up and eat different characters. So a little similar to Pokemon, where you're going to be kind of capturing powers, but in this case, the powers that you capture are the enemies that you're fighting. So you can soak up and eat up these different characters, and based on who you eat, that's the ability you get. Suck up the sword guy, you got a sword. Suck up the electricity dude, you can shoot out electricity. There's a lot of cool things with Kirby. Now, have you played any of the Kirby games, or is he just a Smash character for you?
I played the OG Kirby 64 with the star and the little fairy. I can't think of what it was. It just called Kirby
I think it was
64?
just called Kirby 64.
Yeah, so I played that game, loved it, loved the mini games. Yeah, no, I haven't played any of like the more modern Kirby games, but mainly Kirby 64 and then of course a Smash. Smash. Great Smash character. Yes, I Kirby's adorable. I love him. So adorable, and I think you don't just have to absorb enemies, you can absorb friends too. That'd be helpful. Yeah, I think there's tons of stuff. I just can't help watch the little gifs that you have or gifs that are on the PowerPoint slide. It's so cute.
They're
But yeah,
so adorable. So
but
when I thought about Kirby, the big thing that I was thinking was a game where you control Kirby. You're obviously moving
mhm,
around. You have all these minions that are populating the board with their own special effects, but the effects in the game are very simple. When you take a dude with a hammer, you get a hammer, you swing it. There's nothing crazy about this. And I think that would translate really well into gameplay. You have these little abilities that are easy to read, easy to make sense of, and you'll be trying to kind of puzzle solve a scenario by
mhm,
absorbing abilities
yeah,
tactically, strategically, moving around a map and using them as efficiently as possible.
yeah,
So another cool thing that I was thinking was had to do with the other characters that are in the Kirby universe. For example, you got Meta Knight here and King Dedede, these larger boss characters, and there's a lot of big bosses in the Kirby games. And could you imagine a Kingdom Death Monster or townsfolk tussle approach where it's a boss battling game where you play as Kirby's using these abilities to take them down?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's
And
amazing.
you would have to be so strategic because Kirby can only have one ability at once, as far as I'm aware,
Mhm.
unless they've changed that somehow.
So there is a video game where you can have two powers at once and you like combine them, and that
Oh,
one's really
oh
cool.
yeah.
So maybe
Yeah,
that could be a thing that gets unlocked. But I totally agree with you. The management of the abilities and knowing which characters to gain the abilities at which time could play a really integral factor in the game.
for sure. Yeah, no, and it would be adorable. I think it would definitely pull in a lot of like OG fans, and then people being like, "Oh my gosh, who's this adorable pink character?" So
The aesthetic is bubbly and cute and just full of fun flavor. I love the different effects and just the timing of those characters. I think this is just makes for a perfect theme. So I'd
mhm,
love to see a Kirby board game. Give you some gripping, good gameplay with simple
yeah,
mechanics. Oh, yep. Give me more Kirby.
hmm,
And that's it. Those are the games. Those are the top 10, not necessarily the top 10, just
yeah,
10 games that we're excited to see more board games about. 10
yeah.
intellectual properties we're excited to see about. Any final thoughts or any wrap ups? Which of these are you most excited to potentially see in the future?
Probably Avatar.
Yeah.
I think it's so rich and a beloved series. I think they could do a lot with it. I would be interested. I Of course I would be interested to see all of them put into a game, but I definitely think Avatar, and then maybe Animal Crossing. But that's because I love Animal Crossing.
Totally makes sense. I think for me, my favorite one, oh, this is so hard. I think that I'm just kind of on an arcane kick still. So I think I'd probably like to see League of Legends.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying Legends of Runeterra a lot. I've been playing a lot of Cloud Spire, which uses the MOBA combat, but that more focuses on the faction as opposed to the champions themselves. So
Hmm.
I'd really like to see those champions in board game form. And
Of course.
Riot does such an amazing production with pretty much everything they touch. So I'd love to see what they would do with that.
Yeah,
But
I would be
super
so
excited
up for
in
it.
general. I just a big fan. This was a great conversation topic. I really enjoyed this, and thank you again so much, Corinne, for joining the stream and for putting some time out today to come join us on Side Game.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me again. I love having these conversations with you, especially if we're diving into different fandoms as well. I mean, I think we could definitely create another 10 list. And I am also definitely up for live playing the cabbage game.
Let me know if you find a copy, but please
Sure.
make sure that you check out Super Blonde Nerd's channel. Corinne does wonderful things, and like I said, something for everything. You're not sure what you're going to get, and that's the fun of it. You've got board game reviews, you have different artwork, and then you just have quality commentary in the form of Corinne herself. She does an amazing job with discussing the different topics at hand, and it's just fun to be involved with a fandom and someone who's so enthused about those fandoms. So thank you so much, Corinne, for being here and just for joining us in the stream of the conversation. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super grateful to have a YouTube friend. This has just been super fun every time we do it. So I'm looking forward to more collabs and more live streams.
Absolutely. And if anybody here is watching either in the live stream right now or in the comments, please feel free to ask any questions or any suggestions onto what you'd like to see made into a board game. What topics, what intellectual properties, what things would you love to see in board game format? So curious to hear your opinions and your answers. Corinne and I will be floating around the comment sections and just kind of giving opinions and offering insight into these different things and just engaging in the discussion. But thank you so much for joining us today and for being a part of the stream. And Corinne, any other final words?
SideGame Strong.
SideGame Strong, y'all. Adios.